So currently in Clarity, we have an outstanding change request, number 534. The request asks that we change the status of a project to approved when the work status is changed to prioritized. Currently, when we change it to prioritized, the status remains unapproved. So if we want to change this, it should be fairly simple, and I'm going to walk you through the steps on how to do that. However, there is a problem. It's going to have to be raised with CA support, and I may not be around to make sure it gets resolved. So I'm going to walk you through the problem as well as the solution. So ideally, the solution would be simple. We go to administration, we go to processes, we filter on update, and down here at the bottom we find update status and progress. That's the workflow that does exactly what it says. It updates the project's status and its progress, those two fields, based on the work status field. So if I drill into this and I look at the process flow diagram, it's fairly straightforward. I have a start step. It branches to one of 9 different possibilities. I think I counted that right, 8 or 9, including the one that it jumps to if the project work status is set to prioritized. If I look at the start step, I can see the conditions that indicate where it jumps in the process. So when work status is set to prioritized, go to the prioritized step. So if I go to steps and I go to prioritized, I can see that it has 2 actions. One is to set the progress, the other is to set the status. That's the same 2 actions on every one of these steps. It's just the values are different based upon the work status. So if I drill into set status, we can see that currently it's set to unapproved. So this is a system action saying set the status field to this value. If I click the binoculars, I could click approved and click add, but there's no save button. And if I return and then I drill back into it, you can see that it's unaffected. So I can't edit this because it's an active process. Active processes can't be set to draft mode, which is what it has to be in order to change it, if there are initiated instances of this object. So that's the problem, which I'll get to in a sec. Once we resolve that problem, which I think CA support is going to have to do for us, then whoever needs to update this, it's very simple. Once we have deleted all of those instances of this process, drill into the process, change the mode to draft, which will show up here, go to the prioritize step, change the value of status to approved instead of unapproved, and then you'll need to go to the validation tab and validate all and activate to reactivate the process. However, thinking ahead, you need to be careful when you're doing this because while you're making this change and it's in draft mode, if anyone is changing a project, they won't see the update. So best to do this in off hours when nobody's likely to be in updating their project. Okay, so here's the problem. The problem is if I go to Administration Processes and I go to the Initiated tab and I search for Update Progress, forget the exact name, so I'll just do it this way. If I look for initiated instances of this process, I find them, and not only do I find them, but there are 1,670 of them. And not only that, they are pretty much all in an error state. So you cannot hit the delete button to delete instances of a process if they're in an error state or if they're running. Normally, what I can do is select them, and I'll just pick on one here. In fact, I'm going to pick the first one just to be easier to see the result. Normally, I would select it and say cancel the process. And it says it cannot be aborted because either instances are done or already aborted or you don't have permissions. Now that one actually looks like it is in an aborted state, and it looks like it is. So perhaps I have 1670. I can delete these. I can. I don't think I need this video after all. Okay, but now I've got 83 pages worth of these to do. So let me try the easy way. I'm going to go ahead and make this video anyway, just because it may be informative. So I can't eliminate this if it's in an error state or if it is running. However, what I tried to do earlier was set these to an aborted state, and it didn't seem to work. But now it seems like it may have. But let me go to the end of this list and see if they're all in that state. And it looks like they are, which is good. So what I need to do then is go to Reports and Jobs, and go to Jobs, and go to Delete Process Instance. And now, of course, I can't remember the exact name of this process, and I think I did not capture it, so let me back up. And capture the exact name. Copy, forward, and paste. So I'm going to attempt to delete process instances. When I tried this before, it did not work, and it actually failed badly. So I will submit that. It's kind of a good exercise in doing this anyway. I can now go to the log, and I should be able to see that delete process instance was started by me at 3:13, which is what time it is right now, and it actually finished already. So yeah, this was kind of the problem I was facing. Let me see what happened here. Presumably that should delete all of the instances of that particular process. However, I'm not convinced. So let me look for it here. And indeed, I still have 1,649 of them. So it deleted one. It did not delete all of them. And all of these appear to be now in an error state. These are not in an aborted state. So yeah, glad I continued making this video. This is actually the problem. So I cannot delete them using a job, and I may or may not be able to cancel it. Yes, I can. And now that one shows up as aborting, which if I refresh this at some point soon, it ought to change. But it hasn't yet. And it sometimes does take several minutes to abort a process. But I didn't think it took this long. Okay. And clearly, I don't want to have to do that for 83 pages worth. If I did, and it worked, and I was able to get this from 1,649 down to 0, then I could go back in, change the process status to draft, and make the change. If this is not going to work for me, which I don't think it is, let me try this one again. Liz Ferguson 1044, let's see if that is deletable. And it is not. And it is still aborting, so I don't believe I can cancel it either. It says I can, but it didn't change it. So there is an issue here, and this is beyond what I think we're going to be able to fix, because I can't fix one. I certainly don't see any way to fix 1,649 of them. However, I did encounter something similar to this several years ago, and CA support was able to go in and delete all of these instances. So I think that's going to be the approach here. We're going to have to open a support ticket with CA, have them delete all the instances of update status and progress, and then go in and make that change. Now, the other thing to note here is that all of these instances that are in an error state have the step in progress of either canceled or withdrawn. So there probably is something wrong with this process, in those two steps that's creating the error. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at it just so you can see my thought process while I'm doing this. Let's go back and look and see what's happening with the withdrawn or canceled steps. So if I go to withdrawn, this looks very normal. I don't see anything wrong here. It goes to finish after this. Set progress, sets it to not started, which should be fine. And if I return and look at status, it's setting status to canceled. Now that may be the issue. The status field on a project is rather odd in that you cannot modify the available values, and the system automatically sets projects to certain values based on certain conditions that it finds. So it may be that in attempting to manually set this to canceled, that it is bumping up against some of the auto rules and creating an error. So this withdrawn is also showing as canceled. So I suspect that may be the issue, but I'm not sure if there's a better choice here. And indeed, I think the issue might be that we are setting this, let's look at our workflow here. We are going to withdrawn or canceled, and this is based on a work status being changed to withdrawn or canceled. And the issue could be that we are trying to withdraw or cancel one that has a current status that Clarity says you can't go from that status to a canceled status. So there are rules about the transition from one status to another that are built into the tool, and you can't violate those. So for example, you can't flag something as resumed if it wasn't on hold. So some of those make perfect sense, but I suspect that may be the issue, and it may be that we have to rethink how we do this based on that work status. So it may be that work status of canceled might have to first set the project to some other status and then set the status to canceled. So it'll take some research to figure out what that set of restrictions is on the status field and be able to build the workflow accordingly. So I think we tried to shortcut it and just jump to a canceled status, and that's giving an error because of the existing status not being able to transition to canceled. So this is a little bit long-winded. I'm almost at the limit of my screen recording capability. Hopefully it makes sense, and hopefully someone can pick this up and run with it, and I'm sure CA support can assist. They will be able to tell you what those restrictions are in the status field, and they should be able to clear out all of those existing instances. So hope this helps, and once we get this all done, we'll rock.